We have a lot to get through, so we're hoping to start at 11:50 on the dot. We have a flight to catch as well, so as many of you do as well. So yeah, hoping to start a little bit early on time and giving you guys time for questions. Can everyone hear me? Yeah? Okay, great. Thank you everyone for joining this very highly coveted session right before the very end of the conference. I appreciate everyone for hanging on with us until the closing keynote today. Our name of our session is Batten Down the Hatches, Navigating the Complexity of Open Access Implementation. My name is Matthew Ragucci. I am the Director of Institutional Product Marketing at Wiley. I am joined by Jamie Carmichael, who is the Senior Director of Information and Content Solutions over at the Copyright Clearance Center. I'm also joined by Randyn Heisserer-Miller, the Librarian and Head of Collection Strategies at Colorado State University, Boulder, right?
Fort Collins.
Fort Collins, excuse me.
You're fine.
We did have a fourth presenter who could not be with us here today, unfortunately. Her name is Willa Tavernier. You're going to be hearing from her shortly. She is the Research Impact and Open Scholarship Librarian at Indiana University at Bloomington as well. So I do apologize. A little bit of this is recorded, but what she has to say is incredibly germane to this conversation, this presentation as well, and I hope you find it engaging. So we have used the very evocative analogy of lighthouses and sailing stormy seas because essentially open access is kind of a journey that we're all on together. And I think depending on where we are in that journey, it can be a little bit choppy out on the ocean. So the idea, I think, is for this presentation is to provide you with unique perspectives on what that journey looks like and potentially what some solutions from the different stakeholder groups. So you're going to be hearing from librarians, publishers, vendors as well, and how we can help navigate these complexities together and be that lighthouse beacon in the stormy seas of open access management. So we're going to be hearing from Willa first to provide the library perspective, and then we'll be passing over to Jamie, and then myself, and then Randyn to kind of close us out as well, and hopefully leaving you with enough time for questions as well. And with that, I'm going to jump to Willa's portion of the presentation. If my colleagues in AV, if they're able to turn up the volume a little bit so we can hear this, we can go ahead and get started.
There's a long history of support for open access at IU Bloomington, beginning with the launch of a library publishing program in 2008 on the Diamond or Platinum OA model, where authors do not pay to make their published articles OA. Institutional support, grant funding, or membership support covers the cost. We also have several repositories for green open access or self-archiving, where authors can deposit a prior version of their work. We started in 2012 with our IU ScholarWorks institutional repository and added several others along the way, including our most recent one, DataCore, a data repository. Over time, it was clear that except for early adopters and staunch OA advocates, faculty were not depositing their works. So we had Libraries Technology build a piece of software to help us analyze faculty annual reports of their publications, request the appropriate manuscript, deposit it in our repositories, and provide faculty with the links to the open version. In 2019, we began supporting Gold Open Access, APC-based, through publisher agreements as well as an open access fund. Some are just discount agreements. We pay for these discounts under some, but not all of those. And others are single payer, where we pay a flat fee for a set of OA credits or unlimited OA publishing. And then our fund provides awards of up to $2,000 per academic year to faculty members to go toward APC costs. None of these methods are without their pain points. OA is such a key feature of scholarly discourse now. Authors are asked to pay APCs that can range from $400 to as much as $11,000. So they're seeking support at the same time that libraries were looking into starting to pay for publishing and not just paying for reading. we're not yet subsidizing all faculty publishing, but the fund provides support. Now, article level payments are not as straightforward as contractual subscription payments and can often be prolonged and frustrating. In one case, it took over a month and 34 emails to get a single invoice paid because of coordinating matching funds to pay the excess of the invoice over what was awarded between the IU authors department, co-authors. The publisher was not responding initially to requests for a payment link to pay with a credit card, and we had to calculate and recalculate the exchange rate at the time of the award, the time of payment, and the time that we received our credit card statement. So that homegrown software for facilitating compliance with the OA policy and deposit in our repositories is heavily reliant on external APIs, which was an improvement from our initial manual online searches to find the articles and self-archiving policies. However, after 2 years of somewhat smooth sailing, Sherpa Romeo, which we used to determine which version could be deposited in our repository, changed their data structure, which became much more complex to provide for the multiplicity of paths for compliance with Plan S. So our connector broke. We used the OA button interface for over a year while Libraries Technology rebuilt the connector to match the new Sherpa Romeo data structure. It's now working again, but we found through spot checking that a lot of the times what's output in our software that has read the Sherpa Romeo data as not allowing for self-archiving is not correct when we look manually at the publisher policy. So we're doing a lot more manual spot checking to go along with what we're getting out of the API. We have pain points with the single payer publisher agreements as well. So messy affiliation data because of the way users enter it, needing to tweak affiliations. Not all agreements cover students, so sometimes we have to change that corresponding author. The same thing crops up when there are authors from a number of different universities and we want to change that corresponding author to IU Bloomington so that it can be covered. And then some of the systems will allow the authors to do it themselves, but sometimes it can only be done by the publisher's in-house metadata team. Sometimes the librarian can make the request, other times it has to be the author and they have to go through the customer service interface. And these systems just vary. Sometimes the problem is because some of our agreements are IU system-wide and others only cover IU Bloomington. Sometimes the affiliation doesn't get caught or doesn't get caught properly. And then sometimes even if everything is correct, the system still fails to recognize the affiliation, which leads to frustration at times. Researchers will end up choosing to simply publish behind the paywall. When we go to try to make this open access retroactively, publisher systems vary as to when you can make an article OA retroactively or how long after publication you can do this. Then in terms of interoperability between different data sources from the publishers, there's no single source of data that comprehensively tells us where our researchers are publishing, how much is OA versus paywall, breakdown between green and gold, where the payment's coming from, etc. However, we need to do that kind of institutional publishing analysis for administrative decision making. So what we do is pull data from a variety of sources and platforms and manually analyze it. We now have access to OA Switchboard through the BTAA, and that provides some composite publication data, but not all publishers are on OA Switchboard, so it's not the full picture. And it also doesn't deal with payments, so we still can't see the payment data or make payments through that system. We need to work with our vendors and publishers to resolve this. And then we need to update our own technical systems. Publishers have the ability to push metadata and sometimes the appropriate article version directly to our repositories, but we don't have the system in place. Because we were an early adopter, we're currently several versions behind with our DSpace instance. it's in the process of being updated. But for example, when you pull in from some systems that have embargo metadata, it's not automatically implemented in our version of DSpace. And then some publishers use the SWORD protocol for automated deposits, but we have not implemented the SWORD protocol, although DSpace is a SWORD compliant repository. Then we have the question of responsibility. Has the library assumed the responsibility of paying for publishing? Do we have reliable cost data to make an informed decision on this? How will it impact our budgets? Will we get more funding, or will we have to cut services in other areas? And has this solved the problem that we were trying to solve? Do we remember, or do we still agree on what that problem was? So our VP for Research wants to establish a system-wide open access fund. We'd love to explain to him what the true cost of this would be, how quickly our financing will run out at the current levels, and other implications. We simply don't have the comprehensive data to do this. Although the methodology exists, developed by the California Digital Library and refined and made available as an open educational resource by Anna Enriquez and Alison Langham-Putro, my BTAA colleagues. However, to produce this for the system, we need to run a project between Bloomington, IUI Indianapolis, and Ruth Lilly Medical School librarians, which could take several weeks or months, depending on folks' schedules. And without a specific request for a system-wide publishing analysis, there's little appetite to spin this project up, given the other demands on our departments. We also have emerging issues to consider. In some of our transformative agreement, the only license that the publisher allows is CC BY. And while this removes the paywall, it allows third parties, including publishers, to continue to monetize this content, including using it to drive the development of language models and generative AI, which are then used to build systems that are sold back to universities and libraries. I think libraries need to be paying attention to these commercial and derivative uses, given that historically one of the stated justifications for OA was to reduce pressures on library budgets. I am not aware of any comprehensive initiatives for tracking this or analyzing potential future impacts, but libraries, publishers, and vendors are part of the same ecosystem and communities, and we need to have open and transparent discussion about what we want the future of scholarly publishing to look like. To do this, we need really good comprehensive data to drive decision making, and at this point, we just don't have it.
Okay, so Willa doing a great job outlining some of the challenges and complexities on the transition to open access. And today I want to share an intermediary's perspective on the growth of open access, the challenges coming from complexities, and the collaboration that can actually help overcome some of those frustrations. This image shows the global expansion of agreements over a 5-year horizon in our open access workflow platform called RightsLink for Scientific Communications. And I understand that we're very much living in a mixed model landscape, but over the last 5 years, we've seen a significant transition from author-led transactions flowing through the system to little to no author involvement under both pure OA and transitional deals. You can see what started as a very global North-centric endeavor in fewer than a dozen countries back in 2019 has evolved further east and south to present day in 2023. This data represents deals between 18 publishers across 2,000 individual institutions, consortia, and funders directly. The link is here in case you want to take a little more time with this, and you can also see the geographic mix of authors served through the platform, which is much more colorful and telling a nice story of its own. So obviously with that growth comes complexity, right? There is variability in funder requirements. There are nuances from deal to deal. to account for, customizations that are important to the individual needs of an institution. There's inconsistent utilization of standards and structured metadata, such as persistent identifiers. And there's more infrastructure options than ever before. So, it becomes difficult to navigate, but, it's not all bad news. I'm here to tell you that through collaboration and standardization and automation, this can really be achievable. The transition can be simplified. Here's an example showing how we work with various stakeholder groups on the journey to open access. So 10 years ago, when the platform first launched, our primary user experience focused on the publisher as user as well as the author as user, right? So it's a many-to-many model. It's cross-publisher, business rules facilitating author experiences, and over time, over the last 4 or 5 years, institutions, consortia, funders, and other service providers have become very integral to this infrastructure. So we have, a portal now that those 2,000 institutions are using to review funding requests and manage reporting. And as an extension of that, we realize that not everyone wants to use the RightsLink portal to manage their open access portfolio, and that's perfectly fine. So over the last couple of years, we've worked to build bridges, and 2 examples that I'd be remiss if I didn't mention are first with the Open Access Switchboard, as well as Knowledge Unlatched's OABLE product, where we're bringing authoritative source data about financial transactions and settlements, whether individual APCs or under agreements, and we're flowing that into these other systems so that institutions can consolidate the number of portals they have to go to measure their open access uptake. And we continue to build this out. We're starting off pretty small, but the intention is through API integrations and further cross-community collaboration, we can extend this potentially to consortias, themselves, and any other third parties that are interested in trying to alleviate some of the complexity. And my final note here, we can have the strongest, most robust network of systems and services, but if the metadata flowing through it is not consistent, complete, and correct, we are still driving up unnecessary costs in the transition to open access. So this report, which you can get through this QR code, or it's also at stateofmetadata.com, this is the result of a study we undertook in late 2022 into early 2023, where we interviewed dozens of stakeholders across the scholarly community to understand where the breakages were and where the complexities were in, metadata handoffs from system to system across the entire research life cycle, from, I have an idea to reuse and measurement. And, we really saw some common themes, and we wanted to present those in a really granular, practical way to give these different stakeholder groups to raise awareness of the challenges, and to also give them really concrete ideas for small ways they can improve the flow of data throughout the transition. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Matt.
Thank you, Jamie. So I'm here to provide the publisher perspective on open access and OI management. I always like to know who I'm speaking to, though. Can I just see by a show of hands how many librarians are in the room today? Okay. Any publishers and vendors in here, too? Okay, there's a few of you. All right. Just good to know. So I don't have a lot of time to tell the complete Wiley open access story. I'm hoping that a few of my colleagues have spoken about this over the weeks, and specifically this week here at Charleston. But to just give you a very broad overview and who we are and what we do, Wiley was one of the first major publishers to fully embrace open access, okay? So we have some statistics here, and I'm sorry, I've crammed a lot. I hope you can read some of that, but it shows more or less, at least these top two graphics, the exponential growth that Wiley has seen through open access article output and the number of journals that we've been flipping and launching from either from subscription to hybrid or hybrid to gold as well. So again, it is a really core part of our strategy and our mission and who we are. We believe that the future of research is open, and that's been a common theme this week. But we're also looking to bring our partners along with us on this journey, on this open seas voyage, if you will. And we understand that it's a lot of work, not just to negotiate a transformative agreement. Ooh, the lights just come down here. I hope that's not a bad sign. Yeah, I'm getting get the hook at the Apollo here. Okay, so sorry. As I was saying, essentially these take a lot of work, right? Just to start the agreement, but then to also ensure their success throughout the term of an agreement, through a transformative agreement. That's our flavor of these open access deals. It's an all hands on deck effort. It is sales colleagues naturally, but also product and marketing and legal and customer success, everyone working together to ensure that an agreement, mutually beneficial agreement, can be come upon. I think I'm saying the right things. The lights are coming back on now. But again, we also acknowledge that while it is a lot to handle on our side, it is equal and perhaps more so on the part of the library. And we just heard Willa talk about that. We'll hear Randyn talk about that in a minute as well. It is very complex. It is very nuanced. But we're looking to bring our partners along. So whether you're just dipping your toes in the OA water and you want to learn more about it and educating, or if you're ready to sort of scale up your open access article output, we're here for you every step of the way in an attempt to be a partner. But these deals require a massive flexibility in working with each other to make sure that they would be mutually successful for the different stakeholders, but also reflection and introspection and revision as well over the course of our open access journey together. So enter OABLE. Jamie mentioned the partnership that we have at Wiley and Knowledge Unlatched with the Copyright Clearance Center. Wiley acquired Knowledge Unlatched about 2 years ago, I think, and along with that acquisition came this neat little product called OABLE, and which endeavors to make open access management easy. And for those of you who don't know what it is or what it does, it is actually a publisher agnostic platform. So this is not, I'm not talking about just Wiley open access anymore. I'm talking about open access operations at your institution, regardless of who the publisher is. It was designed to simplify workflows into a single dashboard, hopefully one workflow, into a single dashboard to make things easier, because it becomes difficult to manage this, managing 13 different platforms, trying to get reports from an account manager sent in an Excel file, essentially doing back of the envelope math to try to reconcile whether your open access arrangements are successful. And so what OABLE does, and the beauty of it, in my humble opinion, is that it consolidates and centralizes these efforts into a single dashboard so you can get real-time reporting. And that's just a small part of what OABLE does. And there's also a approval and payment piece of this too, that there's a workflow element that hopefully it minimizes the amount of time that authors are taking to get published and approved, and hopefully not weeks or months like the scenario that Willie described, or really just streamlining this for librarians as well, saving the amount of time that you're doing this work, because we want to get there together. We want to get there more quickly. So that's what OABLE is about in a nutshell. And my last slide here as I'm approaching my time. Again, we believe that we should be working together. This is a partnership, that we want to empower your library. We believe that the future of research is open. We also believe that the library should be the center of research, not just consumption, but output as well. And this is a tool that we believe we can help do that in helping institutions align to their parent institutional goals, and to be really seen as a leader in research output and specifically open access output as well. So we do this through the many partnerships that we have, either directly with publishers or through an indirect information exchange through like the Copyright Clearance Center or Open Access Switchboard as well. But we have a nice plethora of partners who are either enthusiastic or already have begun the data exchange to make this a more simplified process. But we have to do it together. Essentially, this is a partnership, and this is just one tool to help get us to a more open landscape. And with that, I'm going to pass over to Randyn.
Hi. Again, I'm Randyn Heisserer-Miller from Colorado State University, and I am a library strategist, collection strategist, and I'm delineating that because I am not a collection development librarian. I look at the overall picture, and I know strategist is a trendy term right now, but I came to Colorado State in 2001 as the head of collection strategies, and we at that point had consolidated collections into my unit. So I really do look at this as strategic initiatives. We're looking at the budget, nothing is sacrosanct, and we're trying to figure out how to best serve our faculty and students. So my perspective from this is looking at it from that objective point of view. And the partnerships that we have with vendors are key to that. I know there's some questions about partnerships with vendors and that kind of thing, but I don't think we get through this OA landscape in this transitional phase without creating those partnerships and asking of them what we need. Particularly as I get into this, you'll see our sort of constraints in that. So just a little bit about CSU libraries. We've gone through a lot of change, and we still are. In 2020, we have a new dean. 2021, I arrive. Collection Strategies now takes over all of the collections of the library, including e-resources and monographs. At that point, it's only myself, one other librarian, and a professional, state classified person. So it was a lot of putting out fires, and it still is. The library is reorganized into functional units. We no longer have liaison librarians. They are now in student success and research and open scholarship. And in this year, I actually was able, and we're in the final stages of hiring a collection strategies and open access librarian. We moved our electronic resources management librarian into my unit, so her title is now collection strategies and licensing. And then we have a collection strategies and data analysis librarian, and each of one of them sort of oversee different parts of the collection, so STEM, humanities, arts and social sciences, vet med, which is a huge thing for us, and business. Just a little quickly what I just went through, but this is an organizational chart. I'm also currently the interim head of resource sharing, which is fun. And we're actually integrating a lot of their work into our workflows as strategists. So we're looking at the collections, not just what we have in the building, but what we have in our partnerships with shared agreements and through our consortia. We're a member of the Colorado Alliance of Research Libraries and also Willa. So sort of leveraging those resource sharing agreements and cooperative collection agreements to make some decisions strategically as we go forward. A little bit of a timeline on how we approached open access. The Cambridge University Press agreement was pre my time, and that was, as far as I know, the first transformative agreement that we entered into. When I first started, Wiley reached out to me and asked if I would like to engage with them in a sort of hybrid, well, transformative read and publish, but a hybrid journals at that time. And this is really where we've cut our teeth in our open access initiatives. There are a lot of things in that agreement I think I would do differently now as we've learned, but what I really have appreciated, and this is where partnerships come in, is Wiley has been really responsive to our needs. So when we entered that agreement, it was only hybrid, and we couldn't, publish Gold Open using our APCs that were capped. And as we were in the agreement, hybrid journals were being flipped to Gold Open. Then they were saying, well, your publishers can't publish in that. So I went to Neil, our rep, and I was like, that's not really going to work. And so we worked out an agreement, and then that next year they actually added Gold Open into it at no extra cost. So we're able to publish in hybrid and Gold Open. And to me, that's where that relationship works, right? You go to them and you say, this is what the constraints of my institution are. And I think as we look at open access, institutions are all going to have to handle this differently. CSU is a small R1 institution. We are not, like a Harvard, Yale. We don't have tons of money. We have to be very, very conscious of how we're stewarding our money. And I think the unique challenges of open access is that if we really are doing this as an industry, it's gonna have to be touch and go, and not one form fits everybody. And we know this, but I think it's unique, and I think those relationships with vendors actually help us get through that. We added some other microbiology society. We are now in final agreement with Oxford University Press to add hybrid journals, moving to gold open at some point. The price point there was a little high for us. As you'll see, publish and read is in the sciences because CSU is STEM heavy, and sort of the more humanities focused, we have more of a read and publish agreement there. But you can also see we learned that we didn't like the capped situation, so now we're asking for no caps on all of those agreements as we move forward. So part of this is iterative, right? You learn as you go. You say, okay, I'm gonna try this. And that's just my personality. I know that bucks a lot of librarians sometimes, but I don't have to have everything perfect, and we'll try something and we'll move on and we'll do something different the next time. And my philosophical background in open access is I am there to support open access. I believe in making information open to anybody, and I'm not gonna micromanage that process. I'm just gonna move forward with as the landscape changes. Sorry, I did want to highlight one other thing. We entered into a Frontiers agreement, and that was a sort of a deposit, and we decided to put $40,000, which we knew would not cover anywhere near the APCs. And we used Web of Science to pull some publisher data of who our researchers were publishing with, and that kind of thing. And Frontiers was second, MDPI was the first, but we had some pushback from faculty investing in that. So when we put the $40,000 in, we made this big announcement like, oh, we're doing Frontiers, we're covering your full APCs. The money was gone in a month. Not good PR, not great for the institution. But what that did tell us is that there's a huge demand in our small institution for open access. It was kind of incredible. And this year, as we went into adding more money into that fund, we doubled it to 100,000 or more than doubled. And did not announce it this time, so it's going a little slower, which is awesome. But we're trying to figure out how that's sustainable. For the library, it is not. Budget-wise, we cannot keep funneling money into that. We are having a new VPR of research. I'm sorry, I say that doubled. The VP of research coming in and a new provost as well. So we're hoping that we can make some alliances there and get some funding from different sources to help us with this. Because now we also have the data from Frontiers showing all the turnaways we had to do and where those disciplines are. So this is part of that iterative process. You try it, you see what works. It may not be the best solution, but then you have data that you can push out to higher execs that are worried about a return on investment and want information to inform those decisions. Another thing for us is staffing. We are a very lean operation. So Willa alluded to this, the APC mediated agreement, and Frontiers was one of the main culprits of this, is sort of mediating those APC approvals. We just don't have the staffing to do it. Right now, our scholarly librarian is doing that work, and it has been a struggle to keep up with that, especially when it all was used in a month. We are transferring that to this collection strategies and open access librarian as part of their duties, but that's where OAble and some of these other platforms, and we haven't found one that we're really happy with yet, but I think that there's an opportunity there for us to be able to consolidate that work and also get the useful data out of what we're doing with these to share outside to the university as a whole. Collaboration. I've said that throughout this entire thing, and this isn't like a vendor talk, but I philosophically believe in that. I know there are different mindsets of vendors are not your friend, that kind of thing, but I don't agree with that. I think you have to build those relationships, and everyone that I've met, especially as we work through OA, has been very helpful in navigating that for me. And I'm a fairly new librarian. I'm a progressive collection development strategist, if you want to put them all together. And so those relationships, we can't do it on our own. Libraries can't figure this out on our own because our staffing is just not at that level. So that's sort of where we're at. Some lessons learned, takeaways. Who benefited? Early career faculty, graduate students are really set to benefit the most from these OA agreements. We really try to sell this as a student success mechanism. So when we talk about covering APCs, we don't want to be in the business of denying anybody access to that money, but we also want to think about who these early career faculty are that don't have money to cover any of the APC. We're still working through that process of how that looks and what that makes sense. And luckily, our dean is very on board with sort of figuring out some parameters around that. But again, that's where a vice president of research could help in that. Limited staff time, obviously, I talked about that a little bit. Demand is high, and that was encouraging to me as we go into this. Like, even though it may not work perfectly, there is a lot of need for open access, and I think, again, going back to the early career, they are very much into open access. I think they very much want that. And, you may not get that from, that's my time. Partnerships are key. Again, that's the other takeaway. Conclusions, OA responsibility is unclear. Again, partnerships on campus and outside of campus are important. I'm not sitting up there saying libraries are responsible for all of this, but I think if you build it, it will happen, and I would much rather be on the forefront of that, trying to get engagement and doing what we can instead of waiting for someone else on campus to pick that up, because I think OA fits in line with what we're trying to do. Innovation is imperative, thinking outside the box, looking at different things, and again, lastly, partnerships. So that's all I got. I went really fast. I'm sorry we didn't have a lot of time, and you both have to leave, but I'll be here for a little bit afterwards if anyone has questions. But we can open up now for anybody that has questions for us.